So my boyfriend, 24 years old, and I, 26 years old, have been dating since December 2022. I feel I need to give a lot of backstory to give a good idea of how our relationship got to the way it is. We were really happy the first year being together. He loved to see me all the time and made great efforts. I was living in a very overpriced one-bedroom flat with my flatmate, and we would visit each other often. I was paying over £1,000 to sleep in the living room. This is London, of course. I was able to manage on full time, but last year the rent was raised by another £200, which I said I couldn't afford, and he had offered me to live with him 1 year into the relationship. We live in the garden summer house of his parents' backyard, where we have electrics, so pay his parents little rent, which has been great. I had moved in with my ex less than 1 year in, and it didn't go great, but he was on the autism spectrum and very dependent on me, whereas my current boyfriend is very successful in his job and self-sufficient. We didn't argue much and enjoyed each other's company even when not doing much. We don't have very similar film or music tastes, which is one thing that would upset me because it was my favorite activity to share these things. Anyway, last December, his childhood friend had hung himself with no note and presumably no one being aware of his depression. My boyfriend since then doesn't see his friends and on top of that has been highly overworked at his job. So I'd barely see him even when living with him as he's been doing constant overtime. Both our mental health's been awful since it happened, but I did my best to be there for him as he grieved. We didn't go out much, and when we did, I would feel anxious in social settings and not enjoy myself, which he'd get upset about. Last month, he tried to hand in his work notice, but instead of quitting, they decided to send him to another site in Edinburgh to do training. I hadn't seen him properly in almost a month, which is very hard for me. I've gotten into a lot of depressed and suicidal thoughts since my teenage years. When he asked what I needed, I said, I just need constant reassurance and love to know that we're okay. My ex had cheated on me and fallen for my friend, but didn't want to break up with me. So I was strung along for a while. My ex before was depressed and suicidal, but wouldn't let me break up with him, fooling me into believing he'd unalive himself if I left. I was young and more impressionable at the time. Anyway, the last week being alone, with his parents constantly bickering in the garden, I actually felt okay. I was looking after myself and staying sober. However, he finally gets back at 11 p.m. last night. I assume he'd want to come straight to me to see me, but instead he goes to his parents upstairs to catch up and says he won't be long. I started to get anxious. We hadn't been messaging much. He hasn't really said I love you or I miss you, unless I was saying it first. I had a breakdown again where I was hitting myself and crying so hard to the point of giving myself a stomach ache and headache, which I still feel now 15 hours later. I frantically messaged him saying, this isn't fair, I'm getting anxious, because I just want time with him without his parents around. He said WTF and I have the right to talk to them. And I said, sorry, then said, I was worried he doesn't love me anymore or care about me because it felt that way. This was over text, by the way. He said he does love me, but there's something we needed to talk about. I asked him not to leave it too long because I'd overthink. I had to wait 2 more hours until 5 a.m. until he finally came down. I was holding my stomach in pain and he came to hug me and said he wasn't sure how to tell me this. Cut to the chase, he feels we moved in together too fast and that I should move out. He said he knows I need someone to look after me and reassure me. But he feels he can't do that right now and feels he'll be able to put in effort again. He said he doesn't want to break up and loves me. I don't really understand it, because if you want to put in effort, then just do it. Why do I have to leave? So I messaged a lot of people this morning, different friends, my coworkers, my parents. A lot of them are telling me to break up with him, that he doesn't love me, that I don't deserve this. I'm going to stay at my sister's. I don't really know what to do. I can't stay at hers forever. I have a lot of my own furniture that I can't take, so I guess I'll still come here when I want. I don't really know what answer I'm looking for. Because he said this isn't a break because he still wants to see me. If I could, I'd probably just leave, but London is so hard to afford now. We're going to spend the day tomorrow and talk more about this, I guess. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You are not in good working order to be in a relationship right now. From what you have said, his avoidant attachment style is really incompatible with yours. I think you urgently need therapy and to start building up your mental health and investing in yourself. Because he cannot hold you together, and it is harming you to be psychologically dependent upon this man. For as long as you are self-harming, you are not healthy to be in a relationship that is not intensely manipulative. You are now doing a smaller version of what your ex was doing to you. Comment 2. Both our mental healths have been awful since it happened, but I did my best to be there for him as he grieved. Not trying to be rude, but in what way have you been there for him? In your post, you list a lot of ways he has had to assure and comfort you, but you have not listed one specific way you have been there for him. My guess is he still loves you, as he said, but I imagine he is exhausted and still hurting from his friend's passing. He needs time and space to heal. I recommend you focus on healing too. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, after my boyfriend told me I should move out, things got even more complicated. The next day, we sat down to talk. I was still at his parents' place, feeling awkward and out of place. He explained that he felt overwhelmed with everything going on, his friend's death, the job stress, and our relationship. He said he needed space to sort things out. I was hurt, but tried to understand. I packed a few things and went to my sister's place. Living at my sister's was tough. Her flat is tiny, and I felt like I was intruding. She was supportive, but kept hinting that I needed to find my own place soon. I spent hours scrolling through rental listings, but everything was either too expensive or too far from work. I felt stuck. Meanwhile, my boyfriend and I kept texting. He was still distant, and I felt like I was losing him. One night, I decided to surprise him by showing up at his place with his favorite takeout. I thought it would be a nice gesture, but it backfired. When I got there, he was in the garden, talking to his parents. I waited for a bit, but he didn't come to see me. I felt ignored and left without saying anything. The next day, he texted me, asking why I didn't come in. I told him I felt like he didn't want to see me. He apologized and said he was just caught up in the conversation. I felt a bit better, but still uneasy. Then, something unexpected happened. My boyfriend's boss called him and offered him a promotion, but it required moving to Edinburgh permanently. He was torn. On one hand, it was a great opportunity, but on the other, it meant more distance between us. He asked for my opinion, and I didn't know what to say. I wanted to support him, but I also didn't want to lose him. We decided to meet and talk about it. When we met, he seemed more relaxed. He said he was considering taking the job, but wanted to make sure we were okay first. I felt a mix of emotions, proud of him, but scared for us. We talked for hours, and he assured me that he still loved me and wanted to make it work. I decided to stay at my sister's for a bit longer while we figured things out. But then, I made a mistake that changed everything. I was feeling lonely and reached out to an old friend, someone I used to have feelings for. We met for coffee, and it was nice to catch up, but I didn't tell my boyfriend about it. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I was wrong. A few days later, my boyfriend found out. He saw a photo of us on social media posted by a mutual friend. He was furious and felt betrayed. I tried to explain that it was just coffee, but he didn't believe me. He accused me of cheating, and we had a huge fight. He said he needed time to think and stopped responding to my messages. I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I had ruined everything. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely eating or sleeping. My sister tried to comfort me, but I felt so alone. Then, my boyfriend called. He said he had thought about everything and decided to take the job in Edinburgh. He said he needed a fresh start and couldn't handle the stress of our relationship right now. He suggested we take a break and see how things go. I was heartbroken, but agreed. I didn't want to hold him back. The fallout was tough. I had to move all my stuff out of his parents' place. They were kind, but clearly uncomfortable with the situation. I found a small, affordable room to rent, but it was far from ideal. I felt isolated and missed him terribly. During this time, I reflected on my past relationships and realized a pattern. I had always been drawn to people who needed saving or who made me feel needed. My ex-boyfriend, who was on the autism spectrum, my other ex, who was depressed and suicidal, and now my current boyfriend, who was dealing with so much grief and stress. I realized I had a tendency to lose myself in these relationships, trying to fix everything and everyone. I also thought about my childhood. My parents had a rocky marriage, and I often felt like I had to be the problem solver. I think that's where my need to fix things comes from. I always felt responsible for other people's happiness, and it was exhausting. As I settled into my new place, I decided to focus on myself for a while. I started therapy to work through my issues and began reconnecting with old hobbies. I took up painting again, something I hadn't done in years. It was therapeutic and helped me process my emotions. I also reconnected with some old friends, people I had lost touch with over the years. It was nice to have a support system outside of my relationship. They reminded me of who I was before all the chaos and helped me find my footing again. My boyfriend and I still kept in touch, but it was different. The distance and the break had changed things. We were both trying to figure out our own lives, and it was clear that we needed time apart. It was painful, but I knew it was necessary. As I navigated this new chapter, I realized that I needed to learn to be okay on my own. I had always relied on my relationships for validation and security, but it was time to find that within myself. It was a slow process, but I was determined to grow and heal. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for standing up to my boyfriend's disrespectful mother and realizing I deserve better? I've been dating him for 2 years now, and in every aspect, he's been a wonderful boyfriend. We get along really well, we support each other, and we are loving. Except when it comes to his mom. The first time I met his mother was when I was invited over for dinner, and that was enough to see the situation as a red flag. All throughout dinner, she never included me in any conversation, except to ask me a question about my work. I stumbled on my grammar, and she repeated what I said to the entire table, laughing and making fun of me with continued jokes I did not understand. She was openly discriminatory, criticizing people of my race for having boring lives and being incapable. She corrected me for my language and was passive-aggressive about my clothing, that it was too modest. My boyfriend, though witnessing all this, did not mention anything afterwards. This happened a few more times. I couldn't say anything negative about her because he was so attached to her. A common thing he would do is tell me something discriminatory or offensive she said about me and laugh about it. A few days later, he'd invite me to a family outing, saying that I'd be rude to decline, so I should open up my schedule to join. Whenever I hung out with him, she got jealous and screamed at him to come home, after which she'd insult me and tell him that we'd break up soon anyway. When I call my boyfriend at night to sleep, she comes into his room without knocking and asks him what I'm saying. The last time I hung out with them and their family, my boyfriend was walking with his mom most of the time with his arm on her shoulder, and I trailed behind with no one to talk to. It was like he felt guilty to be seen paying attention to me in front of her. I was again ignored and excluded the rest of the day through conversations only centered on inside jokes. At the end of the day, he told me that she had said, "I bring everyone's energy down." The same night, he wanted reassurance that that experience was slightly better than the ones before. It's just been like I'm constantly gaslighted. It got to the final straw when he was upset that I felt hesitant in seeing his mother for Christmas. I got mad, told him my perspective on everything. He said he wasn't able to see the big deal until then, because even if I had been insulted, it wasn't to the level that it was traumatizing. He said that I just couldn't take his family because of how good my family is. After a few more hours of getting upset, he finally started to see how hurtful he was being. He apologized and has been more understanding. A while has passed and he has started to see how her behavior is hurtful and harmful to those around, including me. But the other day, an instance of her harassing her ex-husband came up in a conversation, and I naturally expressed negative feelings towards her. He got upset by this and started to defend her, saying that she is not a bad person and nothing is her fault, and that it makes him uncomfortable that I seem to dislike her. This has got me thinking, will his absolute loyalty towards his mom ever end? When do I give up and accept that he will always be this way when it comes to his mother? I just can't see myself staying long-term if it means he will never defend me against his mother's behavior. We are planning to move out in a couple of years, so I want to hope it will get better then, but I don't know if I can take it that long. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'd leave him a note reaffirming that you are leaving because of his vicariously hurtful relationship he has with his mother. Leave a therapist's business card. Tell him you love him, but not enough to spend the rest of your life being abused by them both. He is young enough that he can have the door of perspective open and show him. His mama is teaching him wrong. That note will be a physical reminder that you did tell him what was bothering you and how to fix it. And then you don't have to speak to him again. Comment 2. Girl, today. You give up today. Really, you should have given this up after that very first dinner, when his mother was discriminatory and disrespectful, and he did nothing to shut that down. If you need help and support, or if you need further encouragement to dump this guy, check out our site, Just Nomiel. You deserve better. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. 3 months ago, I decided to give my boyfriend another chance after he apologized for not understanding how hurtful his mother's behavior was. Things seemed to be improving at first. He started standing up for me more, and we even had a few peaceful dinners with his family, where his mom was surprisingly civil. I thought maybe, just maybe, things were turning around. But then, last month, everything took a turn for the worse. We were at his mom's house for his sister's birthday. I was trying to stay positive, but his mom was back to her old tricks, making snide comments about my outfit and my job. I tried to brush it off, but it was getting to me. My boyfriend noticed and pulled me aside, promising he'd talk to her later. I appreciated the gesture, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. Then, the mistake happened. I was in the kitchen helping his sister with the cake when his mom walked in. She started criticizing me again, and I snapped. I told her that her behavior was unacceptable and that she needed to stop treating me like this. She looked shocked, and for a moment, I thought I had finally stood up for myself. But then she started crying, saying I was trying to turn her son against her. My boyfriend walked in at that moment, and instead of defending me, he rushed to comfort her. That night, we had a huge fight. He accused me of being too harsh and said I should have handled it differently. I was furious. I told him that I couldn't keep doing this, that I couldn't keep being the bad guy just because his mom couldn't handle being called out. He apologized again, but it felt hollow. I realized that no matter what, he would always take her side. The fallout from that night was immediate. His mom started telling everyone in the family that I was trying to break them apart. His sister, who I thought was on my side, started avoiding me. Family gatherings became even more uncomfortable, and I found myself dreading them more than ever. My boyfriend tried to make it up to me, but it was clear that he was torn between us. I started to see a pattern in his behavior. Whenever his mom was around, he would become distant, almost like he was afraid to show any affection towards me. It was like he was two different people, one who loved me and wanted to support me, and another who was completely under his mom's control. It was exhausting, and I didn't know how much more I could take. One night, after another argument about his mom, he admitted something that shook me. He said that he felt guilty for wanting to move out and start a life with me, because he knew it would hurt his mom. He said he felt like he was betraying her by choosing me. That's when I realized that his loyalty to her would never end. No matter how much he loved me, he would always put her first. I started thinking about our future. Could I really spend the rest of my life with someone who couldn't stand up to his mom? Could I handle the constant criticism and exclusion? I knew the answer, but it was hard to accept. I loved him, but I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness for his mom's approval. I decided to take a step back and focus on myself. I started spending more time with my friends and family, and less time with his. I needed to remind myself of what it felt like to be valued and respected. It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the right one. During this time, I learned more about his family's history. His mom had always been controlling, even with his dad. She had driven a wedge between them, and eventually, they divorced. His dad had tried to maintain a relationship with his kids, but his mom made it difficult. She would badmouth him and make the kids feel guilty for wanting to see him. It was no wonder my boyfriend was so loyal to her. He had been conditioned to be. I also learned that his mom had a history of mental health issues. She had never sought help, and it had only gotten worse over the years. It made me feel a bit more compassionate towards her, but it didn't excuse her behavior. It just made me realize that she wasn't going to change, and neither was my boyfriend's loyalty to her. I started to see a therapist to help me navigate my feelings. It was helpful to have someone to talk to who could offer an outside perspective. My therapist helped me see that I deserved to be with someone who would put me first, someone who would stand up for me no matter what. It was a hard pill to swallow, but I knew she was right. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but I'm starting to see things more clearly. I love my boyfriend, but I can't keep living like this. I need to think about my own happiness and what I want for my future. Maybe things will change when we move out, but I'm not holding my breath. I need to be realistic about what I can handle and what I deserve. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for considering divorce? After my husband lied about having kids from a previous marriage. I'm a 29-year-old female, and as the title states, my husband, who is 32, lied about kids. I don't know how to proceed or where to go from here. I've always been the type of person who wanted kids, even back when I was a kid myself. I currently have a 3-year-old daughter with my husband, and I'm about 5 months pregnant with our second child. When I first met my husband, he said he didn't want a lot of kids. And even though I had wanted a big family, about 4 kids if finances and time allowed for it, I was more than happy to compromise with 2 kids. We've been married for 6 years, and I should mention that when we got together, he specifically said that he had no serious relationships before me and no kids. Turns out, that was a lie. 2 days ago, my husband got an email from a 13-year-old girl asking why he doesn't love her but loves his new family. I only saw this email by chance and was confused. I thought it was meant for someone else until I brought it up with my husband and mentioned the address the email came from. His face went white and he broke down in tears. Turns out when my husband was 19 and in college, he got his then girlfriend pregnant, who was 17. For your information, the age of consent is 16 in our state, which resulted in the 13-year-old girl. This is not the only child they had together. After she was born, they rushed a marriage and ended up having 2 more kids, both boys, ages 11 and 9. He said he felt trapped by how close together the kids were had at, and he packed up and left when the 9-year-old was 2 months old. I'm feeling all sorts of emotions right now and don't know how to feel. I feel angry and betrayed for him for lying, hurt that he would do that to his own kids, fear that he could do it to me, and also angry that he convinced me to settle on 2 kids when he had more than that. I know it's also my fault for agreeing to settle, but I can't help feeling like he, in a sense, robbed me of those potential 2 children I could have had. I also have this weird feeling of being robbed of the chance to get to know these kids and be a stepmom to them. I know I shouldn't be hyper-focused on my feelings during this, but I can't help it. I'm only human. I don't know what my next move is. I know I should divorce my husband, but I'm worried that if I do that, he'll do the same thing and walk out on our daughter and the baby I'm pregnant with. I'm also afraid that even if we divorce and he keeps contact with the kids, he won't pay child support of any kind since, to my current knowledge, he didn't pay any support for the other 3 kids. I'm scared, angry, hurt, and I just need advice. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. This is definitely divorce-worthy. Your husband is an absolute scumbag. This man lied and kept an ex-wife and 3 children from you. I mean, how could you ever trust him again? Who knows what else he could be hiding or will hide from you in the future? Even if you stayed with him, what's to say he won't suddenly feel trapped and do the same thing to you and your children one day? He lied to you and took away your ability to make an informed decision about whether to build a life with him. That's unforgivable, in my opinion. Comment 2. I'm so sorry, and I can't imagine how you are feeling right now. Is he officially divorced from his first wife? In my state, you have to check a box on the marriage license if you were ever married. He may have lied on your marriage license. It may not be valid, and I don't think your marriage would be valid if he is, in fact, still legally married to her. Edit to add, has he been paying her child support? If not, I would assume she can have him start paying through the courts. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through all this. So, after that bombshell email, things have been a mess. I confronted my husband about everything, and he admitted to lying about his past. He said he was scared I'd leave him if I knew the truth. I was furious and told him I needed some space to think. I took our daughter and went to stay with my sister for a few days. During that time, I tried to process everything. I kept thinking about those 3 kids he left behind and how they must feel. I couldn't get that girl's email out of my head. While I was at my sister's, my husband kept calling and texting, begging for forgiveness. He said he wanted to make things right and that he was willing to do anything to fix our marriage. I didn't know what to believe. I felt so betrayed, but I also didn't want to make any rash decisions. I decided to go back home and talk things through with him. When I got back, we had a long, emotional conversation. He told me more about his past and why he left his first family. He said he was young and scared and didn't know how to handle the responsibility. He admitted that leaving them was the biggest mistake of his life. He also confessed that he had been sending money to his ex-girlfriend for the kids, but he never told me because he was ashamed. I was shocked and didn't know what to say. I felt a mix of anger and pity for him. I asked him why he lied to me about wanting more kids, and he said he was afraid of repeating the same mistakes. He thought if we had more kids, he might feel overwhelmed and leave again. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like my whole life was built on lies. We decided to go to couples therapy to try and work through our issues. The therapist suggested we take things one step at a time and focus on rebuilding trust. It was hard, but I agreed to give it a try. I didn't want to make any decisions while I was still so emotional. During one of our therapy sessions, my husband broke down and admitted that he still had feelings for his ex-girlfriend. He said he never stopped loving her, but he didn't know how to go back to her after everything that happened. I was devastated. I felt like I was losing him all over again. The therapist suggested we take a break from each other to figure out what we really wanted. I decided to stay with my sister again, and this time, I brought up the idea of meeting his other kids. I felt like I needed to know them, especially since they were a part of my husband's life. He was hesitant at first, but he eventually agreed. We set up a meeting with his ex-girlfriend and the kids at a park. The meeting was awkward and emotional. The kids were shy and didn't know what to say. His ex-girlfriend was polite but distant. I could tell she was still hurt by what happened. My husband tried to make small talk, but it was clear that he was struggling. I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was angry at him for putting us all in this situation, but I also felt a connection to those kids. They were a part of him, and in a way, a part of me too. After the meeting, I couldn't stop thinking about the kids. I wanted to be a part of their lives, but I didn't know how to make it work. I talked to my sister about it, and she suggested I take things slow and see how it goes. I decided to reach out to his ex-girlfriend and see if we could set up regular visits. She was hesitant at first, but she agreed to give it a try. Over the next few weeks, I started spending more time with the kids. We went to the park, had picnics, and even went to a few of their school events. It was hard at first, but we slowly started to bond. I could see the pain in their eyes and broke my heart. I wanted to make things right for them, even if I couldn't fix the past. Meanwhile, my husband and I continued therapy. It was pretty hard on us, of emotions. Some days I felt like we were making progress, and other days I wanted to walk away. I couldn't shake the feeling that he still had feelings for his ex-girlfriend. I confronted him about it, and he admitted that he was still confused. He said he loved me, but he didn't know if he could ever fully let go of his past. I decided to take a step back and focus on myself and the kids. I needed to figure out what I wanted and what was best for my family. I started seeing a therapist on my own to help me process everything. It was hard, but I knew I needed to take care of myself. One day, while I was at the park with the kids, my husband showed up unexpectedly. He looked different, more determined. He told me he had been doing a lot of thinking and that he wanted to make things right. He said he was willing to do whatever it took to rebuild our marriage and be a better father to all of his kids. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, but I was still hesitant. We decided to take things one day at a time. We continued therapy and started working on our communication. It wasn't easy, but we slowly started to rebuild our trust. I could see the effort he was putting in, and it gave me hope. As for his ex-girlfriend, we had a long talk about everything. She told me about their relationship and how things fell apart. She said she still had feelings for him, but she didn't want to get in the way of our marriage. I appreciated her honesty, and we agreed to focus on co-parenting the kids. It's been a tough journey, but we're slowly finding our way. I'm still hurt and angry, but I'm also hopeful. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to give it a try. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.